The kitchen was warm with the smell of tomatoes and sizzling oil. Christy stirred the stew absently, her hand moving in circles, though her mind was still fixed on last night. The words her husband had spoken had not left her. They clung like smoke in a closed room. "I've been forgiven by God," Pastor Charie had repeated again and again, voice steady, as though those words alone could wash away what he confessed. Christy's lips trembled. Forgiven? By God, maybe. But by her? Could she ever share a bed with him again, knowing what she knew? Could she smile in church, carry the title of pastor's wife, while the truth burned inside her like this stew left too long on the fire? The stew hissed louder, snapping her out of her spiral. She adjusted the flame, sighed, and pressed her palm against the counter. From the sitting room, the low hum of the television floated in, a newscaster's voice fighting against the shrill laughter of children playing across the street. But none of it was strong enough to drown the echo of Jerry's confession. "I did it, but I'm not that man anymore. God has forgiven me." Christy's chest tightened. She muttered under her breath, "Can God forgive that? Can I?" "Christy!" Jerry's voice cut through, calm but edged with authority. "Is breakfast ready?" Her fingers stiffened around the wooden spoon. She swallowed hard, forcing steadiness into her tone. Almost. There was a pause. She could almost see him in the sitting room, adjusting his suit trousers, his Bible already on the armrest beside him, as though the night had not happened. He called again, softer this time. "Please hurry. I have counseling at 9. Christy exhaled through her nose, bitterness tightening her throat. The same lips that counseled others had confessed something that had torn her world apart. She stepped away from the pot, leaned against the counter, and closed her eyes. Her mother-in-law's gentle smile flashed in her mind, Elder Pius's stern gaze, the legacy she had married into. Vipers, she thought. That's what last night had revealed. She was living among vipers. "Christy," Jerry's voice again, closer now, the scrape of his slippers on the tiled floor approaching. She straightened, wiped her hands on her wrapper, and whispered, "Lord, please help me." And then the kitchen door swung open. The hall of Winners God's Church echoed with emptiness. Wooden benches lined the space, but only a handful were filled. Pastor Charie adjusted his tie and stepped onto the pulpit, determination masking the frustration building in his chest. "Brethren," he began, voice firm, "though we are few, the Lord delights in faithfulness, not in numbers. Amen?" "Amen," came the scattered response. He preached with energy, pacing as though the pews were full. Sweat gathered at his brow, but his tone never faltered. Inside, though, his thoughts battled him. 7 people again. And the offering basket. What will it hold this time? After service, he shook hands, smiled wide, encouraged them to return. When the last congregant left, Charie sat alone in the silence. He loosened his tie and whispered, "Lord, I left everything for this. Did I hear you wrong?" The faint buzz of traffic outside was his only reply. Across town, Christy strolled out of her aunt's house, sunlight catching on the braids tied neatly into a ponytail. At 21, she looked both youthful and composed, but her mind was restless. Alex leaned against his car, jeans ripped stylishly, sneakers spotless. His grin widened as she approached. "Finally, I thought you were never coming out." She smiled faintly. "I told you I'd be ready." They drove off, music pulsing low. Alex drummed his fingers on the wheel. "So, still going to that evening fellowship tomorrow?" Christy hesitated. "Yes, I need it." Alex smirked, shaking his head. "You and all this church wahala. You know you don't need to be so uptight. Live a little." She looked out the window, lips pressed tight. "Living a little without God isn't living. It's wasting." "Ah," he laughed. "See this preacher's wife in the making. You think I'll be standing behind you with tambourine?" Her laugh was soft, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I don't think you'll be standing with me at all, Alex." He glanced at her, the joke slipping from his face. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," she said quickly, though her heart ached at the truth. She already knew. She cared for him, but not enough to ignore the weight in her spirit. Alex wasn't her future. They rode in silence for a while, the hum of the engine filling the space between them. Christy folded her hands in her lap and whispered a prayer only she could hear. "Lord, if this isn't your will, give me the strength to walk away." Pastor Charie slipped into the back row of Grace Fountain Cathedral, notebook in hand. The sanctuary was bursting, rows upon rows filled with worshipers, their voices thundering in song. The pastor on stage wore the same fitted suit Charie had saved up to buy, preached the same gospel Charie declared every week. Yet here the offering baskets were overflowing, the altar packed with testimonies. Charie scribbled furiously, energy, humor, more singing before sermon. Later he waited outside to speak with the man himself, a seasoned pastor with an entourage of assistants. "Sir," Charie began, bowing slightly, "your ministry is an inspiration. My church is still small, but I long to learn. What secret has God shown you?" The man smiled kindly, resting a hand on Charie's shoulder. "There is no shortcut, young man. Pray more, fast more, hold vigils and crusades, and above all, remain steadfast." Charie forced a grateful smile. The words felt like water through fingers. Not wrong, but not the breakthrough he craved. Another pastor told him much the same. "Don't despise small beginnings. Sow your seeds in faith. The harvest will come." Charie nodded, but inside a weight pressed harder. "Faith I have. Sermons I have. Why does growth not come?" That night in his bare office at Winter's God's Church, he prayed long. Then he planned. 3 nights of fire, he muttered, drawing circles on a scrap of paper. If they won't come on Sundays, they will come at night. He designed handbills, paid for jingles on the radio, even borrowed money he didn't have to decorate the hall and hire musicians. The vigil arrived, banners hung, microphones gleamed, the worship team rehearsed with passion. Charie stood at the pulpit, heart pounding, waiting for the flood, but only a trickle came. A few women, some curious neighbors, stray youths lured by the music. The hall still echoed more than it rang. Charie gripped the pulpit, hiding his anguish behind a fiery voice. "We may be few tonight, but we are mighty in the spirit. The heavens hear us." Inside, his chest sank. "Lord, why?" 2 streets away, Christy slowed her pace outside her gate. A jingle crackled through the A radio. "Come one, come all. 3 nights of power, miracles, and deliverance at Winter's God's Church. Don't miss your visitation." She paused, spoon frozen over her bowl of rice. Something in the fervent tone made her smile. "This small church people, they're trying," she murmured. The next evening, curiosity tugged at her feet. She wrapped her braids in a scarf, slipped into a modest gown, and walked to the address on the flyer. The hall was smaller than she expected, few banners fluttering slightly under the ceiling fans. She had pictured hundreds. Instead, a few dozen worshippers scattered across the benches. Yet when Charie mounted the pulpit, his voice filled the room like a storm. "Tonight is your night. The chains must break." Christy felt a shiver. His words carried weight, not because of the crowd, but because of the fire in his eyes. She swayed during the songs, prayed with hands lifted, her heart strangely light. Alex never came to things like this. He would have laughed at the whole scene. But here, in this unfinished hall with its struggling pastor, Christy felt something she hadn't in a long while. Peace. When the service ended, she slipped out quietly, not ready to be noticed. But as she walked home under the streetlights, her lips curved. "I'll come back," she whispered to herself. Pastor Jerry's shoes crunched on gravel as he left New Life Chapel, notebook once again tucked under his arm. He had spent the afternoon with Pastor David, a man whose church was respectable, though not flashy. They had sat in David's small office, ceiling fan rattling above them. "Brother Jeremiah," David had said with an earnest look, "I know you're restless, but be careful. Many of these big names you admire, they have touched things no servant of Christ should touch. They go to Benin for powers, ritual powers." Charie frowned. "Benin, ritual, but their churches are full, their names everywhere." David nodded gravely. "Yes, they draw men, but not by the Spirit. Don't envy them. Don't soil your hands. Build slowly. God rewards faithfulness." Charie smiled thinly and rose. "Thank you, sir. Your words, they are received." Yet as he walked home, David's warning turned in his mind like a sharp stone. So it's true. That's their secret. That night, he sat across from his father in the living room. Elder Pius was polishing his walking stick, his Agba spread neatly around him. "Papa," Charie began, "I've heard something troubling. They say some pastors go to Benin for powers, ritual powers." Elder Pius didn't look shocked. Instead, he leaned back, stroking his beard. "Ah, you've finally heard. Yes, it is true." Charie leaned forward, whispering, "But Papa, isn't that evil?" Pius chuckled low. "Evil, my son, the world is not so simple. People go to that place, they receive power. What they do with it, that is what makes it good or evil. One man uses a knife to cut yam, another uses it to kill. Is the knife evil?" Cherie's heart thumped. "You mean I should go?" Pius shrugged lightly. "Go and see. Knowledge is not sin, who knows? Maybe it is not as dark as people paint it. Even if you refuse it, at least you will know the truth with your own eyes. Jerry sat back, silence weighing heavy. His father's words opened a door in his mind he had sworn never to touch. At Winter's God's Church, Christy settled into her new rhythm. She had joined after the vigil, drawn first by curiosity, then by conviction. Every Sunday she was there, Bible open, voice steady in the hymns, hands eager to help stack chairs after service. Her presence didn't go unnoticed. One evening, as she wiped down the benches, Pastor Jerry paused at the doorway. "Sister," he said, "thank you. Your zeal is a blessing to this house." Christy looked up, cheeks flushing. "It's nothing, Pastor. I just like being here." Jerry studied her a moment longer than usual, not inappropriately, but with the recognition of a shepherd seeing loyalty sprouting in dry soil. He gave a small nod. "God will reward your heart." As Christy smiled, her eyes glowing under the dim light, Jerry felt a curious shift. He didn't name it. He only knew that in a church still struggling to fill benches, one member shone brighter than the rest. The road to Benin stretched long, lined with thick trees and red earth. Pastor Jerry's heart pounded the farther the bus carried him, doubt gnawing his resolve. His father's words echoed, "Go and see. Knowledge is not sin." Now here he was. The ritualist's compound sat at the edge of town, hidden behind rusted gates. Inside, the air smelled of incense and something darker Jerry couldn't name. The man who received him was tall, robed in faded red cloth, his eyes sharp and unsettling. "You came," the ritualist said, his voice low, as though Jerry had been expected. I only came to ask questions," Jerry replied, forcing firmness into his tone. The man laughed. "Every pastor says that the first time." He leaned closer. "You want power, crowds, miracles, the kind that makes men bow." Jerry's throat went dry. "And what is the crowd?" The ritualist's smile revealed yellow teeth. "Very small. Bring me strands of your mother's hair. With it, we will open the way. You will speak, and people will fall. You will pray, and the sick will rise. Your church will overflow." Jerry's stomach turned. "My mother? Why her?" The man shrugged. "The mother is the root. You offer a little, and the tree bears fruit." Jerry rose quickly, shaking his head. "No, this is not of God." But the ritualist's calm never wavered. "Think well, Pastor. You came because you are tired of empty chairs. Go back with your poverty or return with greatness. The choice is yours." Jerry walked out, his chest heavy. The banners of the vigil flashed in his mind, the hollow echo of his sermons. He clenched his fists. "Lord, why would you allow the devil's road to look so simple?" That evening, Jerry sat across from his father, Elder Pius, in their living room. The smell of palm oil stew drifted faintly from the kitchen where Lady Ruth moved about, unaware of the storm. Jerry spoke quickly, his voice edged with frustration. "Papa, the man asked for strands of Mama's hair. He said that's the condition to open the way, to make the church grow." Pius's face betrayed nothing. He simply nodded, eyes narrowed, his fingers tapping lightly on the head of his walking stick. "I told him no," Jerry continued. "This is wickedness, Papa. Evil disguised as power. I won't do it." Still, Pius only nodded, his lips pressed tight. Jerry frowned. "Papa, say something. Tell me you agree this is wrong." Finally, Pius sighed and said slowly, "You are right, my son. Maybe it's not a good thing. A man of God shouldn't be involved in such fetish things." He patted Jerry's shoulder, his tone steady, almost reassuring. Jerry exhaled, relief softening his features. But as his son rose to answer Lady Ruth's call from the kitchen, Elder Pius remained seated, his face a mask of calm, his mind plotting otherwise. Inside, his thoughts churned. Hair is nothing. If it will bring growth, if it will bring honor to our name, why not? Outwardly, he had appeased Jerry. Inwardly, he was already weighing the possibilities. Christy's Sundays quickly found a rhythm. She arrived at Winter's God's Church before most, helped dust the benches, and stayed back to stack hymn books. The smallness of the church no longer embarrassed her. In fact, she cherished its intimacy. And Pastor Jerry, always speaking with fire, even to a handful, stirred a quiet admiration in her. One evening after service, as she handed out hymn sheets, one of the older women whispered, "Our pastor preaches like he has thousands listening." Christy smiled. Maybe one day he will. Inside, she thought, this is the kind of man I've prayed for. Serious about God, steadfast. Alex's face flashed in her memory, but she pushed it aside. Here was a different standard. Meanwhile, Jerry's own world was tightening like a noose. He sat at the dining table with his head in his hands. Bills were spread before him, church rent, house rent, electricity arrears. His mother entered, carrying a small bowl of gari and groundnuts. "Charie, eat something," she urged softly. "I'm fine, Mama." He rubbed his temples. "Even feeding. See where we are. I can't keep this up." Lady Ruth sighed. "God will provide. He always does." Cherie's voice cracked with frustration. "How, Mama? The offering basket can't even buy fuel for the generator. The roof is leaking. Landlord is threatening us. And you and Papa, you depend on me." From the corner, Elder Pius's voice cut in, stern. "You are the head now, Jeremiah. A man must carry the weight of his family. Don't complain like a child." Charie looked up, eyes burning. "I preach, I pray, I fast. But the church won't grow. We can't even afford food half the time. Am I failing, Papa?" Pius's gaze was sharp, unreadable. A man who cannot feed his family has failed. That is the truth. Silence pressed down, heavy as stone. Charie clenched his fists. He had refused the path in Benin, but the emptiness around him gnawed louder each day. 6 months dragged by, and still Winter's God's church remained small. Elder Pius watched his son pace the compound daily, eyes darkened by frustration. Rent collectors had come twice. Lady Ruth stretched meals thinner each week. Yet Charie still clung stubbornly to prayer and fasting, refusing to return to Benin. Pius shook his head in private. "This boy will starve us all. If he will not act, then I must." One hot afternoon, Lady Ruth sat before a mirror, her hairdresser retouching her graying strands. Clumps of hair fell to the floor, swept aside carelessly. Pius entered the room with his walking stick, chatting idly as though uninterested. When Ruth stepped out to fetch something, he bent, scooping a handful of the discarded strands, quickly wrapping them in a handkerchief. By the time she returned, he was seated calmly, tapping his stick as though nothing had changed. Later that week, Charie sat in his cramped office at the church, poring over unpaid bills. A knock startled him. Elder Pius entered, eyes gleaming, carrying a small brown envelope. "Papa!" Charie rose. "What brings you here?" Without answering, Pius placed the envelope on the desk. "Open it." Charie hesitated, then unwrapped the handkerchief. His breath caught. "Mama's hair? Papa, what have you done?" Pius leaned forward, voice steady. "What you refused to do, I have done. Now take it back to Benin." Charie pushed it away, shaking his head. "No, Papa, this is wickedness. I told you, I cannot." Pius's eyes hardened. "Jeremiah, you are drowning. Your church is empty. Your family is hungry. How long will you pretend righteousness fills a man's stomach?" Cherie's chest tightened. "But Papa..." "Listen!" Pius's stick struck the floor sharply. "The man asked for hair. Not blood, not death, just hair. Do you call that evil? What is hair, my son? Worthless strands that fall every day. Will you let pride destroy you?" Charie swallowed hard, his resolve faltering. The words pressed against his doubts like a hammer. He whispered, "But if it works, then what will I become? A pastor with borrowed powers?" Pius leaned closer, voice low. "No, you will become a pastor with crowds, with miracles, with respect. Once you have the people, you can use it for God's glory, or shame what you want for our name." Charie stared at the envelope, his hands trembling. He had fought this temptation for months, but now it sat before him, wrapped in his father's authority. Finally, he pushed the envelope back toward his father. "I can't take it. Not yet." Pius picked it up, pressing it into his hands firmly. "You will take it, Jeremiah, and when you are ready, you will go." Charie closed his eyes, the weight of the hair strands burning in his palms. Pastor Jerry's palms were clammy as he stood once again before the rusted gates in Benin. The brown envelope weighed like lead in his pocket. He pushed the gate open, stepping into the compound. The same ritualist emerged, red cloth tied across his chest, eyes sharp. "So you have returned," the man said. Charie swallowed. "I brought what you asked for." The ritualist's smile widened. "Good. Sit." Charie handed over the strands of hair. The man held them reverently, muttering chants Charie couldn't follow. He drew out a small blade, carved markings into Cherie's palms, sharp, searing cuts that made Charie wince. The ritualist rubbed a black powder into them, his chants growing louder, until the room seemed to thrum with heat. "It is done," the man finally said. "When you pray, when you lift these hands, the people will fall, the sick will rise. You will have crowds. But remember, there is always a price for everything." Charie flexed his palms, trembling. They stung, but strangely, they glowed faintly under the lantern light. 2 months later, Winter's God's church was unrecognizable. On a sweltering Sunday, Charie raised his hands over a woman complaining of chest pains. She fell instantly, rolling, then rose shouting, "The pain is gone!" The congregation erupted in cries of praise. Another week, a lame man walked after Charie prayed. His fame spread. The pews filled until people stood outside the doors, straining to hear. Charie watched with both awe and fear. Every miracle brought more members, more offerings. Within 4 months, the revenue surged. The roof was repaired, new instruments purchased, bills paid with ease. His wardrobe shifted to sleek suits, polished shoes, gleaming cufflinks. Invitations came from other pastors for joint crusades. For the first time, Charie felt what it was like to live as the kind of pastor he once envied. Yet each time he flexed his marked palms, a shadow lingered in his heart. Amid the surge, Christie's faithfulness never wavered. She sang in the choir, attended vigils, and often stayed back to tidy the church. Charie had noticed her more keenly now, the way she carried herself, her quiet devotion, her gentle smile that lit the room. One evening after midweek service, Charie called her aside. "Sister Christie," he began, clearing his throat. "May I speak with you?" She clutched her Bible to her chest. "Yes, Pastor." Charie hesitated, then said softly, "You have been a blessing in this church. Your commitment, I see it, I admire it. And beyond that, I would like us to walk together, not just as pastor and member, but as man and woman." Christie's breath caught. She glanced down, her heart pounding. Alex's face flashed in her mind, the years they had spent together. But his jokes about her faith, his indifference to God, she knew he was never truly hers. "Pastor," she whispered, "I am in a relationship already." Charie nodded slowly. "I know, but I also know that sometimes God makes clear who is meant for us. Pray about it. Let God show you." That night, Christie sat with Alex. He leaned against his car, smirking. "So, choir girl, ready for the weekend party?" She shook her head. "Alex, I can't. I need to be honest. I can't do this anymore." His brow furrowed. "What are you saying?" "I mean, it's over. You don't share what I carry. You mock what matters most to me, and I can't spend my life like that." Alex laughed, disbelief in his eyes. "So that pastor has gotten into your head?" Christie's voice steadied. "No, Alex, not the pastor. God has. I'm sorry, Alex. Goodbye." She walked away, her steps firm, though her heart trembled. Within weeks, Christie and Charie were seen together, not just as pastor and member, but as a couple. Whispers rose among the congregation, but mostly smiles. For many, it seemed fitting, the faithful sister, the rising pastor. Cherie's life had shifted, from empty benches to crowded pews, from hunger to abundance, from solitude to love. Yet beneath the polished surface, his palms still burned faintly at night, reminding him of the source he had touched. 7 months after Charie returned from Benin, Winter's God's church gleamed with prosperity. The sanctuary now boasted golden drapes, cushioned pews, and a choir in matching robes. Outside, sleek SUVs lined the compound on Sundays, and Charie himself drove home in a polished Lexus, his suits tailored from the best shops in town. But inside the Mbang household, another story was unfolding. Lady Ruth sat in her room, head resting against a velvet pillow. The chandelier's soft light glimmered above, but her face was pale, her body frail. "Charie," she murmured as he entered, "this headache, it never leaves." He hurried to her side, concern creasing his face. "Mama's sorry, but you need rest. You work too much." She shook her head weakly. "It is more than tiredness. My bones ache. My strength is gone." At first, Charie waved it off as stress. He arranged checkups at the finest hospitals in the city. Specialists examined her, ran tests, prescribed pills. Yet every result came back the same. No known illness. One evening, Charie sat beside her hospital bed, frustration etched deep. "Doctor, how can every test be negative? She can barely walk." The physician sighed, closing the file. "We have checked everything, Pastor. Blood work, scans, even rare infections. There is nothing medically wrong with her." Cherie's chest sank. He drove home in silence, the glow of his Lexus dashboard mocking him. That night, lying in his lavish bedroom, he turned his hands over in the dim light. The faint markings on his palms still tingled at times, a silent reminder of the ritual. His throat tightened. Could it be? He replayed the ritualist's words in his mind. "The mother is the root. Offer a little, and the tree bears fruit." A shiver ran through him. His church had indeed blossomed. Miracles drew crowds, money poured in, but his mother, the root, was withering. The next morning, he sat at the dining table with Elder Pius. The marble counter glittered with fine plates, but Charie barely touched his food. "Papa," he whispered, "do you think Mama's sickness, could it be tied to Benin?" Pius raised his head slowly, his eyes unreadable. "Sickness comes with age, Jeremiah. Do not overthink it." Charie pressed his palms to his face. "But no doctor can explain it. What if I traded her health for the church?" His father's lips thinned, but he said nothing. Only silence filled the room. Cherie's chest heaved. The truth gnawed louder than his father's quietness. He had sought growth, and it had come, but at a cost he could never repay. Every sermon, every offering, every miracle was now shadowed by the sight of his mother's frail body. Pastor Charie had become the shepherd of a great flock, but deep inside he knew he had sacrificed the well-being of the woman who gave him life. 1 year later, Lady Ruth's once bright presence had dimmed into a shadow. Her steps were faltering, her face gaunt, her voice thin as a whisper. She rarely left her bed now, but outside the sick room, Winter's God's Church thrived like never before. The parking lot gleamed with new SUVs, choirs sang with orchestral fullness, and Pastor Cherie's sermons drew standing ovations. The richer the church grew, the weaker his mother became. One evening, Charie sat in his father's study, the air heavy with silence. "Papa," Charie said quietly, "her condition worsens every day. She's barely eating now." Elder Pius leaned back, tapping his walking stick against the polished tiles. "We cannot let the public see her this way." Cherie's jaw tightened. "What do we tell them then? People keep asking." Pius' voice was calm, deliberate. "We construct the truth they can accept. Diabetes, a chronic case. That is what you will say." Cherie's stomach churned. "But no buts," Pius interrupted sharply. "The people must never suspect otherwise. If they connect her sickness with your rise, everything falls apart. Protect the name, Jeremiah." The next Sunday, Charie stood at the pulpit, his suit gleaming under the chandeliers. The congregation hung on his every word. "My beloved mother," he said with practiced gravity, "has been diagnosed with chronic diabetes. It is a difficult journey, but by faith, we continue to trust God for healing." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Prayers followed, loud and fervent, drowning out Cherie's guilt. Later that week, Charie and his father oversaw Lady Ruth's quiet relocation to the family house in the village. "Better there," Pius muttered. "Out of sight, out of questions." Charie held his mother's fragile hand as they laid her on the carved bed in her old room. She blinked weakly, whispering, "Why am I here, Jeremiah?" His throat tightened. He forced a smile. "For rest, Mama. You'll be more comfortable here." But as he stepped outside, leaving her behind, he felt the weight of every lie he had told pressing on his chest. 16 months after Charie first approached her, Christy stood radiant beneath a canopy of chandeliers and flowers. The wedding hall glittered like a palace, golden drapes, crystal vases overflowing with roses, choirs dressed in shimmering robes. Guests poured in from every corner of the city, politicians, businessmen, pastors with entourages, women in expensive lace and gel that shimmered under the lights. Charie stood tall at the altar, his suit an immaculate white, cufflinks glinting. Cameras flashed endlessly as Christy walked down the aisle in a gown that whispered wealth and elegance. Applause thundered. Beside him, Elder Pius grinned broadly, cane tapping the marble floor, basking in the glory of his son's rise. But amid the grandeur, one seat remained conspicuously empty. Lady Ruth's absence was explained away long before. During the wedding preparations, Christy had asked once, carefully, "Charie, will Mama be able to attend? I would love her blessing." Charie had smiled tightly, adjusting his tie. "Ah, Christy, Mama has been unwell. Chronic diabetes, you know. The doctors advise she stay out of stress. She sends her love." Christy's brow furrowed, but she accepted it, trusting him. "I'll keep praying for her." And that was all Charie ever gave her. Small explanations, half-truths wrapped in tenderness. Never the full weight of the secret. The wedding itself was a spectacle. Choirs filled the hall with hallelujahs. Cherie's peers marveled at the display of wealth, and Christy glowed in her new role, the pastor's wife. "God has truly lifted us," one guest whispered. "Indeed," another agreed. "Look at Pastor Charie now, from nothing to this." Charie smiled at every compliment, yet each word landed like a stone in his stomach. Because while he exchanged vows under bright lights, his mother lay in the dimness of the village family house. Body wasting, breath shallow. After the ceremony, Charie and Christy danced under the chandeliers, laughter echoing as confetti rained down. Elder Pius raised a toast, his voice booming. Today we celebrate not just a marriage, but a legacy. God has blessed our family. May this union bring more greatness. The hall erupted in cheers. Charie lifted Christy's hand, smiling for the cameras. But deep inside, guilt whispered, Mama should have been here. She should have danced. She should have prayed over us. Instead, her frail body lay hidden, deteriorating from the very ritual that had built this life of abundance. That night, as the celebrations wound down, Christy leaned against Charie, glowing with happiness. This is the most beautiful day of my life, she whispered. Your father looks so proud. I only wish your mother had been well enough to join us. Charie forced a smile, brushing her cheek. She was with us in the spirit, that's what matters. Christy nodded, satisfied, and let the moment rest. But when Charie retreated alone to the hotel suite bathroom, staring at his reflection in the gilded mirror, his hands tingled faintly. The carved palms that had brought miracles, money, and now marriage. He gripped the sink, closing his eyes. Oh, Lord God, Charie whispered. At what cost? 1 year into her marriage, Christy had grown into her role as the pastor's wife. She greeted congregants with grace, led the women's fellowship, and stood beside Charie on Sundays as the church overflowed with worshipers. To many, she was the perfect partner to a rising man of God. But behind the smiles, questions began to surface. After a midweek service, an elderly deaconess approached Christy, her voice low but insistent. My daughter, how is Mama Ruth? It has been too long since we saw her, not even at the wedding. Surely she is better by now. Christy's smile faltered. She is still unwell, Mama. Pastor Charie says she needs plenty of rest. The deaconess frowned, unconvinced. 1 year of rest? And no visitor allowed? She shook her head and walked away. Later that week, a group of young women lingered after choir practice. One whispered, first the wedding, now all this time. How sick can Mama Ruth be that no one can see her? Another added, even the first lady of the church hasn't seen her. Is that not strange? Christy overheard them, her chest tightening. She forced a gentle rebuke. Don't spread rumors. Mama Ruth is recovering, and privacy is what she needs. But their words dug into her. At home, as she folded her gowns into the dresser, she turned to Charie. Charie, she said carefully, people keep asking about Mama. Even I don't have answers. Why can't I see her? Why didn't she attend the wedding? What exactly is she suffering from? Charie stiffened, adjusting his cufflinks. Christy, I've told you before, diabetes, a chronic case. The stress of visits could worsen it. Trust me on this. Her eyes searched his face. But 1 year, Charie, 1 year and not even her daughter-in-law can visit her? Do you know how it looks? He stepped closer, his tone gentle but firm. What matters is protecting her peace. Some illnesses are better managed in silence. Don't let idle talk trouble you. Christy nodded slowly, though unease lingered in her heart. When she lay awake that night, she whispered to herself, where is she really? Why can't I see her? How sick is she that even I must be kept away? For the next 4 months, Christy, subtly but firmly, continued to ask about Lady Ruth's health, requesting that she needs to see her. Some days she'd make an outright demand, other days she'd insinuate a cover-up. At some point, her husband couldn't contain her anymore. One Saturday morning, Pastor Charie sat opposite his father in the study, the glow of the chandelier reflecting off polished mahogany. Bills, church invitations, and letters of praise cluttered the desk, but Cherie's mind was elsewhere. Papa, he muttered. Christy keeps pressing. The members, too. I can't keep deflecting. Elder Pius leaned forward, tapping his cane against the floor. His tone was calm but heavy. Then it is time. Sooner or later, she will know. Better she hears it from you, not through whispers. Cherie's brow furrowed. If I tell her she might turn against me, she might, then you make sure she doesn't. Pius's eyes were sharp. Jeremiah, listen. She is your wife. She must fall in line. You reveal enough to bind her to the truth we have created. And if she resists, he paused, voice lowering, you compel her, by persuasion or by force if necessary. This secret must never leave this house, not after 3 years. Cherie's throat tightened, but he nodded. I understand. That night, in their luxurious bedroom, Christy sat brushing her braids before the mirror. Charie paced behind her, palms sweating despite the cool hum of the air conditioner. Christy, he began, his voice unsteady, there's something I must tell you, something only you and Papa know. She turned slowly, sensing the weight in his tone. What is it, Charie? He swallowed, then poured it out. The ritual in Benin, the hair taken from his mother, the miracles, the growth of the church, Mama's unexplainable but worsening sickness. His words stumbled, but the truth tumbled out in pieces, each heavier than the last. Christy froze, her brush slipping from her fingers. You used mama hair for power? Charie reached for her hands. Listen, Christy, I had no choice. The church was dying, and God has still blessed us through it. Look at what we have now. The hospitals we built, the scholarships, the donations to charity. God has forgiven me. Can't you see it? His grace is evident in all these works. Her eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. And Mama, she's dying because of this. Charie, how could you? He gripped her hands tighter, his voice firm. No one must know. Do you hear me? Not the members, not your family, no one. This is our secret now, for the sake of the church, for the sake of our name. She tried to pull away, but his grip held. Even if you hate me for it, Christy, you must keep this secret. Swear it. Her breath shook, her heart pounding. The man she admired, the pastor she trusted, had just bound her into a lie that would define the rest of her life. In that room, surrounded by wealth and glittering comforts, Christy realized the truth was darker than any rumor, and now she was trapped in it. The smell of fried eggs and steaming yam filled the dining room, but Christy's appetite was gone. She set the plate before her husband, masking her trembling hands with a forced smile. Pastor Charie adjusted his cufflinks, bowed his head for a brief prayer, then ate with calm precision. I can't live with this lie, Christy thought. Not another day, not another night. A life I thought God gave me, a godly husband, a family of faith, is nothing but a horror dressed in lace. A husband who sacrificed his own mother, a father-in-law who called it wisdom. I will never accept this. Charie glanced up. You're quiet this morning. She managed a soft laugh. Just tired. He nodded, but his eyes lingered too long. She looked away, pulse racing. He knows. He's watching me. For now, she had to pretend. She had to wear the mask. Later, Christy followed him to the driveway, leather briefcase in her hand. The morning sun gleamed against the black SUV, against Cherie's polished shoes. She skipped lightly, almost theatrically, her voice bright. Have a blessed day, my husband, she said, handing him the case. Charie studied her face, noting the strained cheer, the twitch of her lip, the stiffness in her hands. He smiled faintly, but his thoughts darkened. She won't keep quiet. Christy waved as the car rolled away, her heart thudding. But her decision was already sealed. 1 week. That's all I need. 1 week to find a way out. Inside the car, Charie leaned back, pulling out his phone. His voice was steady, deliberate. Papa, he said quietly, we need to talk. Christy knows, and she won't keep quiet. Christy thought she had time. Charie knew she didn't. And somewhere in this nightmare, between loyalty and survival, blood and lies, the story had only just begun. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.